Hello, freak bitches.
I think. And I know that Black Sabbath is getting back together with the original lineup to do two shows at the Birmingham NEC in England. So I called Sharon Osbourne. I said, Sharon, I got this great idea. I fly out and hang out with Black Sabbath and bro down with a band and go to band practice and have a really good time. And you put me on the guest list for the shows and I hang out for free. And it's like the best time I've ever had, knowing she'd hang up on me. And she said, let me call him and ask him if that's okay. Because I already knew Ozzy, but I didn't know the rest of the guys. And she called me later that day. She said, oh, they think it's fine. Here's the address. Just let us know when to expect you. So I booked it. I booked it around my trip to Africa. So I went USA, London, bus up to Wales where they were practicing. Taxi. Ozzy's assistant came and got me. So I hung out with Sabbath at band practice. Me and the band in full band rehearsals, the best. Watched the shows, the two reunion shows at the soundboard, and then the next day I flew to Kenya. And so it was just a good, that was a good chunk of travel. And I ended up in South Africa after all of that and said to myself, okay, I'm going to come to Africa once a year. And I just started picking out different chunks of it. And it just started going. And that was 20 years ago. And I've been there, I don't know, like 20 sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah. And you never don't learn. I call it the big book. It's where you learn about life and death. And, you can learn that anywhere. But you see big stuff. You see people who suffer, people who have no food or water security. Like you and I, we talk about retirement and life insurance and vacation. A lot of tribes, there's no words or even ideas in their lives. Like I was hanging out with some Acholi people once in Uganda a few years ago, and I had a translator. It's a Dinka guy who spoke, I guess, whatever Acholi people speak. And I said, can you ask them if they have any words in their language for life insurance, retirement, or vacation? And they understood retirement. You get too old, your kids take care of you. But a vacation, they said, you leave somewhere and you come back. Why would you want to leave your home? It's where all your friends are and your family. And why would you ever do that? Or like life insurance, like, what the hell are you talking about? And you start meeting people who their sense of time and space is, I've got a bowl, there's some rice in it. So like today I got, tomorrow we'll see. Where you and I think, okay, in December I'm going to do this. And we really have a realistic expectation of being alive and breathing in December. And in your life, you've no doubt thought of, okay, when I retire, or whatever that means to you, money, some kind of security up the road. There's parts of the world where people live their entire, 37 years. And they don't have a day of that kind of security. They got the T-shirt, a stick, and some shade. And I try and, not as some voyeur, I'm trying to understand the world. And I can understand it by reading some books and seeing some documentaries. But there's nothing like getting out into what Mark Twain called the territory, a phrase I stole from David Lee Roth when he said it to me. And David Lee was actually a real inspiration to do a lot of traveling. Because one time we were talking, and he'd just come back from open sea kayaking in the Pacific. So I said, so why? He said, Henry, is because don't get eaten today is a great thing to have on your to-do list every once in a while. I said, damn, that is profound.
You know what he was doing up until recently? He moved to Japan, didn't know anybody there, and he was taking kendo lessons. He's learning how to sword fight from a Japanese master.
Yep.
With his dog.
He told me. He called me one Sunday a while ago. I helped him with his autobiography, so I worked with Dave really closely for many, many months. I met him when I was in Black Flag 30-some years ago. I walked by him at an art gallery. I went, wait a minute. And he went, Black Flag, right? I'm like... No way. It's the Van Halen guy. We became about buddies. But he called me from Japan and said, he's learning Japanese. He's very smart. And he was learning Japanese and started speaking Japanese. And he's just taking lessons. He said the sword guy was just like every day, just like, you're stupid. He come just breaking him down.
Yeah, and he just got an apartment there.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's loving it.
Rock star just gets this normal apartment with his dog and just starts taking kendo lessons every day.
I think Dave has always had a great appreciation of that kind of discipline. I mean, he comes up through martial arts since he was a kid. And I think someone else in his family's into it, but he's been that way, that kind of discipline. And you can see it on stage. The guy is very physical, but it's coming from a real disciplined, not messing around kind of aggression and control. And Dave, really loves Japan. He says he called me. He said, I'm living in a small apartment. I'm taking my language lessons. I'm taking my martial arts stuff. And he was doing sword stuff for quite a long time, though.
Yeah, he's always been involved in martial arts, and even the way he sort of approached hedonism, I always felt like it was sort of like an applied approach to hedonism, like his rock star lifestyle thing. What he was doing, it's almost like, look, not a lot of people get a chance to do this.
Yep.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, one time when we were working on his book, he said, I go home to Pasadena now and then, where born and raised, and some of his high school buddies see me like, well, Dave, must be nice, being David Lee Roth. And he said, you know what? On graduation day from high school, we all were on the same starting blocks. You chose the bank job. That's a sure thing. You're going to die in that cubicle. I choose, and he said, to sail the seas of consequence. I was like, I love that. And I was like, yeah, man, that's daring. And so he won. I mean, like, he's had a pretty good ride, I reckon. And so in my own way, I come from minimum wage work. I'm nobody from nowhere. And I got into music via punk rock because the band Black Flag said, hey, you're a crazy guy. You want to try out to be our singer? I'm like, what do I have to lose? Yeah. And so I went for that. And it led to everything else, and ultimately why I'm here in this room with you today.
Do you miss rock? Do you miss touring as a musician?
No, because I did it. I did it really hard until I had nothing left to give to it. And so now if I went back to it, it would just be repetition. And it might be fun repetition, but it wouldn't be meaningful in that I wouldn't be putting out anything new. And for me, the day I stopped doing music was I woke up one day and I just sat up, and it was like a light bulb went on. I went, wow, I'm out of lyrics. and it wasn't like, oh, no. I'm like, okay, well, give me my scroll. I guess I've graduated.
When was this?
2003 or that. And I just called the manager. I said, hey, I'm done with music. And he saw 15% of that go poof. And he's like, no. I went, yeah. He goes, why? I said, because I got nothing new to add. He goes, well, then just go out and do the hits. I'm like, man, it's not what Coltrane would have done. It's not what Miles Davis would have done. I just can't. I don't want to repeat. It's not artistically brave to me. And so I'd much rather just try new things. But thankfully, by that time, I was already doing talking tours all over the world, and they do very well. Tons of acting, voiceover. I had all this other stuff I was doing. Had the book company, a record company, music publishing. I had all this other stuff. And so I just kind of let all of that stuff fill in. Put it this way, I'm busier now than ever. And I don't miss the music. I see bands in the airport all the time with like the laminates and their road gear. I'm like, yeah, rumble, young man, rumble. I had my fill.
Well, it's beautiful that you did it on your terms. You decided to do it. It wasn't it wasn't like, there's a lot of aging rock stars that have that sort of existence where they have to go out and do the hits.
Yeah.
And no one wants to hear your new shit. That's a big part of the problem.
Yeah. And so they have to do that weird circle the wagons thing. Like, we're going to play this album in its entirety. Okay. I go to some of those shows. I throw my money down and go see that band do that album in its entirety. It's cool. But it's not for me.
Well, I've heard the Stones still put on an awesome show.
Yeah,
and I think one of the cool things about it is that, like, wow, Mick Jagger can still fucking do it.
Yeah.
He still apparently works out twice a day.
Yeah,
he's in amazing shape.
Been in great shape. There's some people, and they're rare. They actually, it's not about money. That's when I really start trusting those old rock stars. Like Rod Stewart doesn't need a dime. I mean, that guy can buy 4 countries right now. He's probably playing tonight in Las Vegas or somewhere. Elton John. They just really like doing the thing. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, they'll be rocking. They'll die on stage. And it's not money. It's not like, hey, we might get popular. It's like, man, we really want to play Brown Sugar. I don't, but I admire them. I think what I'm saying is I think it's real.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it is real.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's real with a lot of them. But what I like with you, what you're saying is that you had already figured out all these other paths in life that you were enjoying, putting your creative energy, and you just decided, I'll just do those.
It was summer 1984. I was 23. I was in Black Flag, and we were touring. We were staying out of California because the Olympics were coming, and we knew the cops would just be looking to smash down any supposed ne'er-do-wells. So we just stayed on tour the whole year pretty much. And I noticed all these great bands around me, very talented people, and we're all broke between tours. We're like living like sharks. If we don't like tour, we don't eat. And between tours, the guys in that band, they're all waiters. I'm not putting that down. I'm saying, but the music wasn't keeping you in rent 12 months a year. And I'm not nearly as talented as any of them. So I said, man, if those guys are struggling, then what am I going to do? I better get plans B, C, D, E, F, and G together. And in those days, I just started my little book publishing company. So I'm going to work harder on writing. I'm going to become much better. Started doing the talking shows. I'm going to get much better at that. And I'm going to start saying yes to things when they come along. A couple of years later, Hollywood started calling, hey, can you act? I'm like, as well as I can sing. Click. But I started, acting. It was Crispin Glover, the actor. One day he said to me, he said, Henry, please consider acting. Just if you get an audition, don't necessarily say no just because you're the music guy. Like he said, I think you might really like it and you could probably do it. And so I said, okay. And within a year I was doing film. And then, hey, can you do a voiceover? I'm like, yeah, I got a voice. And so I just started saying yes to more stuff. And that was the plan. Just have more things to do, which is fine because I don't like sitting around anyway. And then ironically, music ended up being very, very good in all of that for me. But I had other plans. And I've noticed that a lot of old geezers around my era, they didn't come up with something else. And they just, I don't know why. And they didn't make another plan. And they get put into those weird tours where they're, you bring your kid and all of that. And it's more that they gotta more than they wanna. And I'd rather wake up wanting to do stuff, not having to do stuff. I think, like you were saying a while ago, like less obligation, just so you clear the deck so you can really do what you want. Because life is short. I mean, last week I was 20 and now I'm 56. I mean, it goes by really fast. It doesn't matter if you're in a cubicle or a prison cell, man, you wake up one day, you're like, damn, that was fast. And so you might as well make it as much as what you want it to be as possible, because all you're getting is older. I don't understand why people don't fear that. I wake up every day with the Grim Reaper's scythe whistling by my ear going, you better get up, man. And it's all the up I need. I don't ever sleep in.
Listen, man, to say that you've had a crazy experience in this life is one of the most understated things a person could ever say. I mean, where do we begin, right? Let's tell everybody your story. So you were wrongfully committed of murder. You spent 22 years on death row before you were exonerated by DNA evidence.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Harris, and I was, as Joe said, convicted and sentenced to die for a rape and murder I didn't commit at the age of 21. In 1981, a woman named Mrs. Craig was murdered in Delaware. I had never met the woman. I was in prison on unrelated charges, and I stupidly made up a story to try and get out of those charges. The police soon realized that I was a liar, and they fabricated the charges around me then. So it's ironic that in a few days you're going to Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. And that's where the murder happened, really, basically. And Linda Mae Craig was leaving her job at 4:05 p.m. on December 15th, 1981. She's going home. She gets abducted. I don't know any of this, but I tried in desperation to get out of a lie that this officer put on me. I got pulled over in a stolen car. The cop beats me up. He puts charges on me. I'm facing life imprisonment, and I'm a junkie. Because all of my life I was destroyed by what happened to me at the age of 7. I had my head beaten in by a man with a rock in his hand after he sexually assaulted me. And I did all the stupid things that people can do in the aftermath. I kept it a secret, and I let it foster all the anger in me. I became very aggressive as a child, and I ended up in trouble all the time. And when I was in prison on these unrelated charges to the murder, I stupidly fell into that mindset of desperation of trying to get out of it. So the police put a prisoner in the cell next to me. He said I confessed to him. I was given a 3-day trial. I was sentenced to death and put on death row. And then stupidly, I escaped from prison in 1985 and ended up on the FBI's most wanted list.
How'd you get out?
I was being transported to court, and the sheriffs were being cool with me at first. They were talking about what was going on in Philly. They were two nice guys, like 60, 68, 67. And we drove 5 hours from one of the hardest prisons in America called Huntington. And I left there after spending 2 years of my first 2 years in silence. So if you opened your mouth, they would come in and beat your head in. So I was so glad to get in the car because my mom was waiting in my lawyer's office because they were going to give me a review of my trial because they withheld so much evidence. So I was eager to go to court. And it was the coldest day of 1985, February 15th. We stop at a gas station in Exton, Pennsylvania. And as I got out of the car, the officer driving pulled past the cubicles. Now, we all got out of the car and ran over to the cubicle together, and I went in and started peeing. And the officer's holding the door for me, and my eyeglasses start fogging up. You know what I mean? Because you go from the freezing cold to the warm to the cold, your eyeglasses. So all I know is I turn around and I come out, and he has the door like that, and I put my head down, go under his arm, and I turn left and go back to the car. And the dude smoking a cigarette doesn't know that his partner went into the cubicle to piss. And as I'm running back to the dude, he pulls his pistol out and point blank shoots at me, Joe, like, pow. And as it went past my face, I was like, oh, shit. I hit the ground. I ran, and he's following me with the gun. I could feel it like I was waiting for him to blast me, you know?
Why did he shoot at you?
Because he thought I overpowered his partner.
Oh.
He doesn't know. His testimony at trial was, I turn around, Nick's running at me, my partner's down or gone. I pulled my gun and he runs, and I wasn't going to let a death row prisoner run, so I tried to stop him. I shot. So I run around the corner, I hit the ground, I ripped all the skin off my hands. I run around the corner and I fly towards this restaurant, and there's all these people innocently eating dinner. And I'm running right towards the plate glass window because he ain't going to blast me, you know? And I ran like I knew he couldn't shoot. And then I shot around the corner, and I ran down to a gas station. I tried to steal a car. That didn't work. Then I ran like 400 yards, 400 yards, 400 yards, and I hid behind the car I just escaped from. And I was laying in the weeds behind the gas station about 50 yards from them while they were screaming, who was the bigger idiot for letting this happen? And I was thinking, oh my God, like, what am I doing? What do I do, Joe? How do I just jump up and say, wait a minute, it was a mistake? You know, they already tried to shoot me in the face.
Right.
So I go hide behind the police station, and next 4 hours, oh my God, I'm being chased by a helicopter. And he chases me, and he pins me, and he chases me. And I was so fit that I ran for 4 hours through the woods without caring what the branches did to my face or nothing, man. I blew out both quads. I did my hamstrings. I ripped my feet open. I ran so hard in terror that I didn't care, man. And I got away. And I made it all the way to Florida, and I was going to leave the country and all this. And I said, I got to go back.
How did you get to Florida?
I stole a dude's wallet in New York, and I got on an airplane, and I went down to Florida, and I tried to rob a drug dealer. And I tried to do I was sitting there. I was so angry. I was going to kill myself. I was on, I'll never forget this day. I didn't want my folks to see me in prison handcuffs no more, you know? So I was going to buy a raft, and I was going to go out in the ocean, and I was going to have one last party with all the foods that I loved. Then I was going to stab the raft, wait for the sharks after I cut my wrists, you know? And then I was going to cap myself and go. Then I said, no, I'm going back. So I turned myself back in. They put me on death row in Florida. And I went back and I faced it, you know? So they beat me for 4 minutes, man. They broke my face, broke my back, crushed me, man, tortured me. And I thought, I'm going to get you back. You know, for all the days you made me go in a cage and beat some other prisoner while you stood there with a club laughing at me. I'm going to get you back. I'm going to make sure I start being a loving person again. So I'm sitting there in 1985, 1986 with 105 years plus the death penalty. And I decided, fuck this. I'm going to be a nice guy. So I started to learn, okay, I suffer from aphasia. I had my head beaten in with a rock. So
What is aphasia?
aphasia can be identified simply in people who have stuttering disorder. Their brain and their vernacular abilities are distorted by a disruption in their brain. Either their brain is functioning too fast or their mouth is functioning too fast, or there's a combination of it misfiring. And aphasia can be through trauma or through genetics. And aphasia affected my life so much as a young person, I never had the respect to listen to people because I couldn't function, I couldn't articulate, I couldn't speak. When I was at trial, people spoke words that I didn't understand. And it frustrated me. And when I tried to speak and I'd stutter, people would be like, duh, duh, duh. Come on, retard. What do you got to say? So after that beating, where they beat me for 4 minutes and they broke my face, I began practicing speaking to myself. Every day, I learned new words, and I taught myself how to correctly articulate that word into a sentence beautifully for my own self, in my cell, every day. And then I became very, very good at writing. I began helping other prisoners. I became the most dangerous prisoner that they held because I cared about other men. I wrote to their mothers. I wrote letters to their lawyers. I gave up opportunities for people to write books about me so I could help another innocent man. I did all those things because that's how I got back at them for what they did to me. So in 1988, I'm sitting in my cell and I read about DNA. And I knew right then I could prove my innocence. So I was the first man in America in February of 1988 to ask for DNA testing to prove my innocence. And they threw away all the autopsy material. And when I discovered new evidence, they destroyed that. And this woman who came to meet me and start visiting me fell in love with me, and she believed in me. So she stood by me and told me that she would be with me either to the gallows walk or to the moment I proved my innocence. And for 9 years, she stood by me, you know. And finally, we found some evidence that was testable in 1995.
What was the evidence?
It was sperm from a rape. And it was being sent out here to California to Dr. Edward Blake. And it broke open in transport and spilled. So Jackie left me. I had nothing left. And then they put me in a special unit. And they started torturing me. I keep this part quiet. I never told the story. It would ruin what happened in Fear of 13. It's now out on Netflix. But they finally closed down the old prison I was in for 12 years, where the average rate of survival was only 5. And I was one of the hardest dudes there, and I made it. They closed the prison down, and they opened up Greene County Supermax. And the courts ordered that every prisoner in Pennsylvania be allowed out of their cell for 8 hours. The administration looked at each other and said, fuck that, not the crazy cannibals and not the serial killers, not the dudes that have been assaulting and raping each other. So they picked 48 of us out and they put us in Pittsburgh in a special penitentiary setting in which we were in a sealed unit. And they put all these guards in there that weren't allowed to touch other prisoners because they were so violent, and told them, we're giving you the craziest of the crazy. You know Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lamb was a real man, right? His name was Gary Heidnick. He abducted black women in Philadelphia and put them in a pit under his house and fed one of them to the other survivors because he was building a master race. He was my neighbor, man. Like, so they started torturing us and doing all this psychological crazy shit to us where they were feeding us to each other like wolves. So I kept it all quiet until this year when, once again, misfortune fell in my life and I released Monsters and Madmen, the new book that I was going to give you today. And I thought, you know, I got to tell that story, you know. But it's been so hard to come back from these moments, Joe. It's just like, I look at what they did to me and how I went to that moment where the DNA is gone. Jackie leaves me. And so I find out I'm dying from hepatitis C that they did when they infected me of it when they broke my teeth, when they beat me. So I asked to be executed. I said, I studied all the world's religions. I read over 9,000 books. I did everything in piety my mother asked me to do while I was in prison. I don't want to die like Dale Carter did, with the guards coming to his cell and taunting him, you know, teasing him, and listen to a man scream in agony because the bile in his belly is killing him. So I wrote to the courts and I asked to be executed. I said, fuck it, man. I want to die as a man I love, who can respect himself. The court intervened and ordered the DNA testing that was going to be done on the evidence expelled. In July of 2003, the DNA test come back and they proved me innocent.
So the evidence spilled and they just captured it once it spilled?
it was in a box with all this evidence. And Dr. Edward Blake, who did the O.J. Simpson trial DNA, said that there would be challenges to it if he did the DNA in 1999, 1998. In 2003, they had advanced mitochondrial DNA separation so well that he felt confident in his results. So the federal court got involved and said, look, I don't want to have this man executed. I want the DNA done. So they did that. And it was amazing that on the day that I called the lawyers, they revealed the truth to me. I called this lawyer and I'm like, what's up? He goes, Nick, we got DNA from 3 separate sources that prove you innocent. And I said, that's amazing, Mike. I'm really grateful. He goes, you know, we used to tell people you're crazy, that we never believed in you. I'm really sorry for that. I'm like, man, really? You want to take away my joy now, man? So I was really downcast that the day I called my mother. My brother Mikey was having a seizure at her feet because he was an alcoholic after he fell off a roof, and he died shortly after, so it just went fucking crazy from there. They take me off death row and they put me in a psychological cell and they tell me they can't trust me. That no human being who has had done to them what we've done to you cannot be angry. That if we open this door up and we let you out, you're going to get us. So we're going to leave you until the day they let you out. We're going to leave you in this cell because we don't trust you not to kill us for what we did to you.
What did they do to you?
They used to have a thing called Gladiator Day. So the lieutenant would be off on a Sunday, and the guards who started to come from the Philadelphia area were black, and they didn't like the guards up in the hillbillies beating on black prisoners. So a weird thing happened where this lieutenant came up with an idea, well, look, let's let the prisoners get this frustration out of you guys by you pick out the biggest guy and you pick out this guy. So one day I'm sitting there minding my own business, and they open up my cell, and there's 4 of them with clubs. You're up. So I got to go in the cage, and I got to go and hurt somebody while they stand outside. And if you don't fight, they're going to come in, and they're going to beat you worse than you can beat a man or get beaten by one man.
So they did all this for their entertainment. Were they ever punished for this?
Not until after the riot, when one of them testified against the others for the murder and stuff. I watched 11 people commit suicide. I've been stabbed, strangled, beaten senseless. The guards used to taunt me because I was accused of a psychological murder, of going out and stalking this poor woman because she looked like my girlfriend, they said. So I was never treated like a prisoner. I was treated with deference. The worst word I know in the English dictionary. The way I was treated was so harsh that it was cruel beyond cruel. And yet, all I wanted to do was have enough within me to learn to beautifully speak so that on the day that they executed me, I could tell them how much I cared about myself. That was more important to me than living, because somehow when you suffer like I have suffered, your head cracks open and you have a hypersensitivity to life, so that when you touch other human beings, you never forget the 14 years no one was allowed to touch you. You know what? Fuck this. I ain't crying no more.
It's all right, man. There's nothing wrong with crying.
No, I just thought about it. You know what, Joe? I do, because I feel bad for the heart.
You shouldn't feel bad.
No, because I
about
look
crying.
in your arms and your eyes, and I see the hurt that I'm causing you for doing this.
No. Don't worry about that, man.
All right, well,
Listen,
this is what I know.
All I'm doing is trying to imagine what your life has been like. Don't you worry about me at all.
I'm harder than life, and I'm kinder than love. Secretly, I'm a saint. I never hurt no one. I try my best to be polite every day. And I've had misfortune at every turn. And I'm very sorry that I sit in this chair today after it came about. You see, I believe in good. I believe good is going to win, Joe. And I believe that I had good again almost 3 years ago when I met my wife, current wife, Laura. See,
I had a woman in my life before that who used me and left me here in Los Angeles. I ended up homeless on the streets here. And I was actually living up in this area on the streets because my good friend Noah lives around here. Him and Jason took good care of me in my bad times, I call it. So I go back to England. I meet this woman. I fall in love. We have a baby, and she's born on your birthday. And I start to believe in hope again. I go do a podcast in England with my good friend Brian from True Geordie, and I start to spread my message again, and I want to get all these young kids to believe in themselves. And then one day I put the baby down for a nap, and I get Laura to lay in my arms because she's sick. And we get up 20 minutes later, and the baby's dead. And I'm coming down the steps with the dead baby, and I'm all fucked up again. And then people are so cruel that in the village they started, maybe the baby was killed by the guy on death row and all this shit. And I have a stalker ex-wife, Karen, who just won't leave me alone, contacts the police and tells them that I put out a tweet that night. And it only happened because my good friend Anthony Samandani, who's in the green room, told me the day before my daughter died about a good close friend of his. They lost a baby that day. And so when our baby died, I put out a tweet just saying, appreciate the people in your life because they're so precious. And the police came to our house and humiliated me and wanted to know how I could tweet about something because my clock was 9 hours off because I was living on the streets of Los Angeles and my time was still on LA time because Anthony and I are developing a major motion picture about my life. And I told the police, are you crazy? Like, why would I? So I can't even get a break on the death of my daughter. That was the moment that the director of the film Fear of 13 decided to rip me off for my rights to the film.
He decided to rip you off how?
He owed me 50,000 pounds for doing the film Fear of 13.
He decided to rip you off because he thought you killed your baby?
No, he decided to rip me off then, not pay me my money when I asked him. I needed money to bury my daughter. So I end up in a shouting match with Arthur DeMoulis, the billionaire from Boston. I promised to get on his plane and come kick his ass over the money we're arguing over because I begged. It was crazy. I ended up.
I'm still confused.
Okay.
So what? So your child dies? Is it?
My child dies and everything goes badly.
Death syndrome.
Yeah, SIDS.
SIDS.
And everybody that I counted on to have my back, including director David Sinkton, who promised to pay me for my participation in the film, all then tell me, well, no, I'm not paying you. And I'm like, how can you do this when I need this money to bury my baby?
Why did he say he wasn't paying you?
Because he said he didn't owe it to me and all this. I said, well, are you crazy? You have a written contract. So it's the same thing. You know how the entertainment business is. Once they get what they get out of you, that's it.
So he just said he wasn't going to pay you no matter what the contract said.
Right. So Arthur DeMoulis invested in the film, and he owns most of it. So I write to Arthur. I call him. I said, Arthur, David's not paying me my money. Can you help me? Because he owned most of the film by that point. So Arthur gets all annoyed at me. I said, look, man, my daughter just died. I blew up at him. I told him, send me your private jet. I'll come to Boston. We can have a fist fight. You love to fight. All that shit. I lose control. And then Arthur, out of his grace, sends me some money so we could bury the baby. But it went through all this terrible shit. So I said, now I'm going back to America. So I leave England. I come over here. I got 2 daughters with Laura. We're over here now in Oregon. And Anthony, my God, I meet this amazing man only because of Muhammad Ali dying. And now he's going to help me make a major motion picture about my life. So I get away from all that drama of losing the baby and being humiliated by people thinking I would do some shit to a little girl. And I go back and I rebuild everything. And then I try to go to Canada and they won't let me in. That's crazy. So I can't go do my job there. I lose all that.
They won't let you in because you were on death row for 22 years?
Yeah.
Even though you're innocent?
Not only that, I just came from speaking before the United Nations, sitting next to the president and current former presidents of Switzerland. And I have a security clearance from that. I worked in a high-profile job in England, going around speaking all over to governments, but Canada holds it against me because I escaped from death row. So I can't enter the country of Canada. Robin Sharma tried to have me come up there and speak for him with his conference, and I had to humiliatingly do it from my home via Skype. It's like I'll never stop being punished for what happened, you know what I mean? But I don't care about that. What really bothered me was that all those things started to befall me, and I started losing hope again. So I go, and I even tried recently just to have a normal job and give up everything. I'm a beautiful speaker in schools, and I go around and try and help people with their education, right? So I was trying to do that the last year with a friend of mine named Wayne Sharp from New Zealand. He has a company called MyVerse, and he wants to help children find the correct path. Education's so important. We can't get that going. I decide I'm going to give up everything and just go get a normal job. But that doesn't work. So I'm sitting there, and it's Jamie's birthday, and I'm angry. Like, what the fuck? How could it fall apart again? So then you contact me after I tweeted, and it all starts again. And I'm back to believing that it doesn't matter how I got in this chair, or it doesn't matter that the man preceding me has everything and I have nothing. I still believe in good. It's called you this time. And I told you in that message I sent you, I said, fucking hell, Joe, you're going to change my life doing this, man. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to be nice to me. But you are. And for that, man, I'm willing to keep going.
I don't think anybody can imagine what it's like to spend 22 years on death row for something you didn't do. I want you to go back to the night that you got arrested and tell us, because you kind of, there's some tissue right beside you if you want it.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm done with all that crying. Go ahead, brother.
It's just the night you were, how old were you? You were 20? 21?
20. I turned 21 before they sentenced me to death. I'm 20 years old. I'm a Philly kid, and I'm high on meth, and the music's blasting. I'm driving through Chester, Pennsylvania.
In a stolen car.
Yeah, man. Everything in my life is just chaos. I'm fighting with my two brothers all the time, and no one has respect for me. I was ugly. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I just came from a bar, and I go through a stop sign, and the next thing I know, I saw the lights. I pull over, and the beating in my head's out of control. And I'm sitting there, gripped with fear. I took a beating in Philly on December 4th of that same year, in which they ripped all my teeth up with a blackjack. So I was really scared, you know. I was like, don't move, don't run, don't do nothing stupid.
You took a beating from cops earlier.
Yeah, you know, Philly cops put me in my place because I ran my mouth. So there I am sitting there, and the next thing I know, bam, on the window, bam, and he rips open the door, and a track from Bad Company was playing really loud, and I can't hear or make focus of what he's saying, you know. And then next thing I know, boom, right up out of the car, and he's got me on the car, and his name's Benny Wright, and he's 6'4", and he's got me pressed against the top of the car, and he's holding me down, and I can't breathe, so I start resisting. I popped his arm off, and the adrenaline goes, boom, here comes the beast out of me, because at 6'2", and that age, I was crazy tough, man. I was like off the charts. And so I pushed him back, I remember that, and he couldn't believe it. He pulled out his stick and raised it up, and I just snatched it out of his hand and chucked it away. And I was looking at him like I was like that zombie guy. And he went furious, man. He pulled out the pistol, and I seen it coming. And I grabbed his hand, and I pushed down, and I had my arms outstretched, and the gun went boom down into the ground like that. And I looked at him, and he put the gun up there, and he said, motherfucker, you must... And he puts me in the car. I'm sitting in the back seat. I'm freaking out, you know. He gets in the car, and he's like jumping back and forth in the front seat. Then he waits, and he looks at me in the mirror, and he grabs the mic, and he's going like, shots fired, officer assist, shots fired. He looks at me one last time. He goes, help, help, help. Like it's still going on. And like I'm like, what? Like what's going on? Dude tells him when they get there, the backup officers get there, he's like, he tried to kill me. He's got my gun, and I got it back from him. I'm like, no, this is going south. They jack me up, take me out of the car, beat me down, take me to jail. Now I'm charged with attempted murder and kidnapping of a police officer. I'm 20 years old, and I meet Skip DiMatteo, the public defender, who then tells me I'm facing life imprisonment, and that's it. And they're going to put me in the security wing because my bail's going to be so high.
I looked at him, I said, what do you mean, man? I was just driving home. I'm in a stolen car. Like, he said, no, man, you ain't never going home. So I broke down. And I went through detox with no help, you know? So 3 days I'm in a cell with nothing but this newspaper. And it's the headline on the newspaper, Mrs. Craig's murder, and it starts taunting me, man, taunting me. Somehow in my head I came up with this crazy mantra. If I knew something about something that big, I bet you'd let me go about this lie. I didn't try to kill nobody. I was sitting on my bed, and the guard was walking by, and he goes, what's wrong with you? And I started telling him what was going through my head, the whole story. And that was it, Joe. Oh, my God. He ran down the block. He went to the sergeant's office. They got me to the warden. The warden's now been told
So when
this.
you say you're telling him what's going on in your head, so
I
in your
repeated
head,
it.
You
Oh, my
had
God.
you had a plan
To tell him a story.
to tell him a lie.
And when that officer responded, because he heard the story, I didn't have any idea what the impact of my words were. I was so stupid. Oh,
Well,
my.
you're also going through detox.
Yeah, and so they take me to the warden's office, and he starts praising me. They take me out of solitary confinement.
Praising you how?
Telling me I'm doing a great job.
'Cause what did you tell him?
I told him that a man that I knew in the area had told me he had done the crime, and that if they let me out, I would tell them all about it. And he told me I was helping the community. They were taking me out of solitary confinement and all that. They told me that they spoke to Officer Wright, and he was going to retract his charges and only charge me with resisting arrest, and they were going to drop the rest of the charges, and everything was going to be good. And then 3 days later, they came back and said, dude, you lied. And the only reason you lied is because you want to tell us that you did this. They put me in a room and start doing all this
So
shit.
how'd they find out that you lied?
The dude that I made the story up was no longer a drug addict, and he had an alibi.
So you just tried to pin the story on some other drug addict.
The dude that robbed me, he rolled me up in a rug and tried to kill me with a .357 Magnum. So I figured, I heard the story that he was dead, and figured they won't even find him anyway, you know. But a 20-year-old doesn't have any concept of, you know, complex stuff like this.
Especially in the 80s, right?
Dude, they came right back to me, and they had me in a Delaware County District Attorney's office. And this Detective Martin told me in no certain terms I was going to tell him why I killed that woman. I wasn't leaving that room. So for 13 hours, they tortured me, man. Started bringing up my childhood and all that shit. I told them, man, I just wanted to blow up my whole world. And they said, oh, that's good. So this is my confession consists of. I didn't kill anyone. I never meant to kill anyone. That's good, Nick. That's good. You never meant to kill her. What are you talking about? So I went to trial, and I was given a 3-day trial for the murder of Mrs. Craig after the jury found me not guilty of all my original charges. So I was really frustrated that a jury heard the testimony of Officer Wright. He would later be fired from the force, being caught up in a drug gang in Chester. He was dirty, but they didn't know it at the time. But a jury found me not guilty. That prosecutor went mental when that happened, and he decided to seek the death penalty. So a month after I was found not guilty of all my original charges that I made the stupid story up by, they gave me a 3-day murder trial that in essence was a joke. And what they did was they preyed upon the poor jury and showed them pictures of the victim and stuff like that, man. And they had an inmate who burglarized the prosecutor's home and was facing 20 years come into court and say, I confessed to him. That was it.
So the inmate said that you confessed to him.
Charles Catalino.
They got to do that.
Yep. So I'm sitting there, and they dropped a bomb on me, and I know it's coming. The jury was so crass that they went out to the Wagon Wheel restaurant and put their dessert order on hold while they found me guilty, and then during the sentencing phase, they had their dessert. I was 20 years old, man. I'm like, this isn't real, man. Like, I never killed or raped this woman. How can this happen, you know? And then the only mistake I truly think I made was that I told the judge to go to hell when he sentenced me to death because he couldn't look me in the face.
Why do you think that's a mistake?
Because he decided to send me to Huntington Prison. the hardest prison in America at that
And
time.
what was he going to do before that?
I don't know, but he made sure I went to the place that they broke you. See, Huntington was designed as the prison. If you raped another inmate, they sent you there. It was the first SHU program in America. It was the first really
What is SHU program?
special housing unit or security housing unit or level 5 supermax, like Pelican Bay. And your punishment was that you weren't allowed to speak in your cell. And if you got caught speaking in your cell, they came in with a nurse, and after they beat you down, she jabbed you in the ass with Thorazine, and they knocked you out for a week, and you lost your mind. So it was horrible. Like I told you, the first 2 years of my sentence, every day I kept my mouth shut. I didn't care what was done around me or not. You weren't allowed to say a goddamn word. And they meant it, man.
You're not allowed to talk to other inmates?
Nothing. I dare you to sing happy birthday to yourself like I did. I paid for that one. They fucked me up, Joe. But I don't care about that. Look, I realized I was in a race. I had to kill off the person that I was. The person that I initially was upon entering prison was a deceitful, lying coward with no fortitude because no self-respect resided within me. And in utter humbleness, I took everything that they did to me, and I paid for every window I broke, everything I stole, every lie I told. And then I started to love myself. I figured I ain't getting nothing out of this but misery, so I'm going out like the dude. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to speak beautifully on the day they execute me. I'm going to walk to that walk, man. I'm going to do this. I didn't kill that woman, but I damn sure ain't no coward. I'm going to find out everything I can about life, and then I'm going to face my death. I'm going to do it with joie de vivre, man. Like, I had this beautiful, beautiful speech ready for him, too. I was going to lay it out and just be at peace because I realized there was nothing else to do. I couldn't fight. I couldn't argue. It didn't matter because God's in control of my life, and I really believed that I had a choice. Either be a bitter pill and get sucked dry by all the misery around me, or get my shit right and start loving myself. So I taught myself how to speak and overcome this aphasia that affected me my whole life. And I found out that I was giving myself neuroplasticity healing, and I became very graceful and calm in prison. I was so serene and so powerful.
How'd you find out you were giving yourself neuroplasticity healing?
I found that out from Robin Sharma. Robin Sharma is the foremost authority on speaking about neuroplasticity healing. And when he found about what I speak about, he said I am the living embodiment of his teachings. That through grace and dignity and kindness, I've developed my own charisma that carries me with confidence. And that is the description of what he teaches professionals, billionaires, everyone.
Do you explain neuroplasticity for people who don't know?
Neuroplasticity is a reward system within your brain wherein your interactions, especially with other human beings, heals you. So people who suffer from PTSD, people who have had trauma in their lives, can actually heal themselves by being meticulously polite. And I began all of this when I was released. My mother sat me down and she said, "Nicky, listen to me. For you to get out of prison and not be a nice man is a waste of everyone's time. Every prayer, every time someone called me the mother of a monster, every time a woman spit in my face, everything that I went through is a waste of time for you not to be a nice man. So I want you to promise me one thing. Every day, I want you to go out and say, 'Yes, ma'am,' 'Yes, sir,' and 'Thank you,' because I want you to show respect for who you are in that way. They hurt this family badly. It's the only thing I ask." I didn't know that she handed me the tool to healing, because neuroplasticity is the self-contrived act of rewarding yourself for being a nice person. And my gift over the last 14 years is that I made myself so amazingly pliable and gifted at helping others find the good within them. That's the reason I'm truly here today.
the thing that I've been able to accomplish through my writing and through my efforts is to show people that you take things personally in life, you be then a fool. Because what you've done is you've taken all the hurts and you've made them the justified reason why you have to be an asshole to somebody. Whereas you keep forgetting that you've been given a break over and over just to be here, man. Dude, I've been shot, stabbed, strangled, run over by a car. I hung myself in prison, 2 drug overdoses, and I had a cannibal trying to murder me for 2 solid years. I know that I could fall at any moment from my own hand. But God bless me, I believe so much in my purpose in life that I won't kill myself. I won't give up. And it's only because I've been tested that I know that it has to be for a reason.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Future science.
Yeah, that's what you're into.
I'm way into future science. I wish we lived in the future.
So that's where ghosts fit in?
I
your
think
future science?
future science, I just think time is an illusion. I think that I'm more, did you ever see Interstellar?
Yes.
I'm more in that zone. That's smacked of good science to me. Like, I was like, yes.
So when you say time's an illusion, you mean like the watch is real? Like if it says 4:30, that's when the movie starts, right? That's all real.
No, that's just coordination. It's within our species, we're coordinating together. We're
Right.
working as an ant colony. We're sending signals, which happen to be time signals. We're
Right.
using math to coordinate.
But if you go
between us.
underwater and hold your breath for 5 minutes, that's real 5 minutes.
No, that's just when you run out of oxygen.
So that 5 minutes, that it's the counting of that time
Doesn't mean anything.
doesn't mean anything.
No, doesn't mean anything.
But if someone's 5 minutes late, you're like, bitch, you're 5 minutes late. You're like, no, this doesn't mean anything.
Well, I'm never mad about that because I'm always late. So,
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Well, the only time supposedly is now, and everything else is just our pathetic attempts at measuring it and trying to.
that's just
Put it into a
coordination
box.
on people. Like that's
Right.
all we're doing. Like, how old are you? And then that just means how crispy you are from going around the sun. That's not like really anything.
Rotisserie.
Yeah, you're like, sorry,
Right.
skin crackling. It's just kind of that. And to me, like time is it's just space. It's like how far are you away from this gravitational pull? I think gravity is way more interesting. I think
It's
time
definitely
is just
interesting.
us coordinating with math.
Well, we definitely are, but it's also like when the sun's coming up. Like, check your watch, 6:15, sun's coming up. That's a real thing.
We're just clocking a spin of an Earth.
Right. Yeah.
That's the same thing with the lungs underwater. The Earth spins.
I agree
So,
with you and disagree with you at the same time.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think you're right, but I also think the fucking movie starts at 4:30.
But that's another human putting
Yep.
on a movie. It's
true.
So you're just
Yep.
coordinating with.
Right.
Give me an example of time that is a manifest thing outside of human coordination.
Well, you could. The oldest
And
star.
I don't mean like things happening. I
Right.
mean time.
Just
There's
time
no-
itself.
Like, is that helpful in any way other than for us? I don't think it exists in the universe, really.
Well, if the universe had a Big Bang, and that was a point
I don't know
where
if
it started,
I believe the Big Bang. Sorry.
what do you think?
I think we're looking at, okay, black holes. You know
Right.
what? Okay, say there's a train, right? We're at a depot.
Okay,
I love that word.
Train
we're at
depot.
A depot.
like Home Depot or
A train depot.
okay, okay,
And there's like a giant butt of a train, right? Huge. I don't know, 20 feet tall, 18 feet wide. Filled with that, like, that, psh, that feeling of like, oh my God, there's great mechanical power. And then it leaves the depot, but you're still there. You didn't get on it.
Right.
And it just travels in the distance into a tinier, 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 tinier speck until it's just a little point until you can't see it anymore. Did the train shrink?
No.
Okay. So when you see all this matter going into a black hole, is it really hitting a singularity? Are we really condensing matter to that extent? Or is it just condensing to a certain extent and traveling in the distance? Is it going somewhere? And that's why we perceive it as gone. It's basically...
Have you ever run this by an astrophysicist?
Then they break out the wormhole, but that's not the same thing. That's not what I'm saying. Like, and I think the Big Bangs are the other end of that process.
The under end of the process of coming out. That's a real thought. They think that, well, every galaxy has a supermassive black hole that's
In the center of it.
1/2 of 1% of the mass of the entire galaxy. So the larger the galaxy, the larger the supermassive black hole. The prevailing theory is that, or one of the prevailing theories, I should say, inside every black hole may be another universe. It's entirely possible
Exactly.
that there's another universe of hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with supermassive black holes in the center of them. And you go through that one, you go into, it's fractal. It just goes on
Yes.
forever and ever and ever.
Exactly.
That's entirely possible.
That's
too.
my philosophy. And I think the whole universe is spinning. I think the whole thing's a spiral deal.
I think they think that, don't
And
they?
then within the spiral, you get the eddies, right? Which are the galaxies and the irregularities and stuff. But the whole shebang is also spinning.
That multiverse idea is, like, legit scientists talk about that now. That
But that's
there might be
different.
infinite numbers
Multiverse-
of universes.
Yes, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
And
That makes
this-
so much more sense.
Well, it makes some kind of look. The people that go, "Oh, that's crazy." Well, the universe is crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy that you look out and you see forever. It's crazy. That's pretty
Right.
fucking crazy.
And when you look
know?
up, you're looking out.
Yeah.
You're sitting on the side of a planet looking
You're in the
out.
middle of the whole thing. Right?
Yeah.
You're in the middle of this soup of reality. But to think that that's crazy, but that's as crazy as it gets, like, says who? Why wouldn't you think there's fucking infinite numbers of these things out there? That we're just a part of something that's so big. Like, if you looked at all the zeros on that number, you wouldn't even be able to wrap your head around it. You'd be like, what? What's a billion? How many zeros is that? How many billions is this? How many trillions is in a billion? What? There's no way.
That thing,
it's
have
too
you ever,
much.
There's this enigma thing. I love it so much. It's talking about it. It has to do with why we haven't seen aliens yet.
The Fermi paradox? you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah.
The Fermi paradox is like questioning why, because there's so many different so many different planets that could potentially support life. They're like, if there's 100 billion galaxies or hundreds of billion, each one has hundreds of billions of stars, how many of those have habitable planets? And if so, why haven't they contacted
Yeah.
us? Yeah.
And like the math is overwhelming that either we're the first or they kill all the comers or we're like,
Or we turn inward and go into the
I need more
hyper
pop
world.
for that.
Yeah.
What's the turn
I could light
inward?
up. I
Wait,
think
what's
turn
the
inward is the idea that we all go virtual and that we become some sort of a symbiotic thing connected to this hive mind, this real electronic reality. We just have to be further away.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at that. But the big ones don't last that long, apparently. Our
Yeah.
sun's a good one. It's like a Toyota Tercel.
It's like
They're
a
shitty
Toyota
and little,
Hilux,
but
you
they
mean?
fucking last,
Land
man.
Cruiser.
Hilux,
Yeah.
we don't have that over here.
Yeah,
have
you got
that-
like the Tacoma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hilux is like a small Land Cruiser, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
You guys got a bunch of wacky
The
cars. over
Cruiser's probably better. I'm about to buy a Land Cruiser. That's the Hilux there.
there. The new Land Cruiser? Yeah.
The tray back though, so like a dual cab, so like 5 seats, but it's got a tray on it, and then
A tray.
Yeah.
You mean like a pickup truck bed?
like a pickup truck bed. But we usually rip the one that's on it off. We usually rip the pickup truck bed off because it's bulky. You know, there's not a lot of room in it really. Usually rip that off and we'll build a steel tray. So it's like a whole flatbed, or you might call it a flatbed, and you can just fit a lot more on it, and it's a lot more rickety. You know, you can throw firewood, rocks on it, whatever the fuck you want.
Well, you guys have to have vehicles that you could drive for like a day before you hit a gas station.
If
right?
you're doing that, if you're doing those hunts that I do, yeah. So one of the first things you do is you rip off the fuel tank and you put like an aftermarket fuel tank on it. That's usually like twice the capacity.
Yeah.
Or you throw a second fuel tank on it and go from there. So I don't know what it is in gallons, but like say a fuel tank's like usually 60 litres.
20 gallons is what usually a fuel tank is out here.
Well, then we'd double it to like 40 or 50 or 60 or something like that.
Right.
And because there's such a market for it in Australia, there's a bunch of them that you buy ready that are ready to mount onto your vehicle.
Why is there a market for that in Australia?
Because it's fucking 100 miles there anyway. That's why. Forward driving's like different in Australia as well. You know, it's like, so where my business is, the nearest city, which is Perth's like 18 hours drive. You know, and there'll be fuel.
18 hours drive to the nearest city?
Yeah.
18 hours?
18 hours.
What is that, Jamie? That's like,
Too far.
but what would it take us to get? That's like Colorado.
I've driven from Ohio to here twice, and it
How long?
took 33 hours. And 24 hours gets you from like Columbus to about Amarillo, Texas. And that's
24 hours of straight driving.
straight driving.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
so this is
Ish. So,
like
like-
Western Australia is like a massive state. It
Make
goes
it
from the
Oklahoma.
very top of Australia to the very bottom of Australia.
What does it
Here
feel
the
like when
other
you
way.
get out of the car for 33
sucks.
hours of driving?
Sucks so bad. The one time we ended at like 4 in the morning, right on the Sunset Strip, right at that hotel, the Hyatt,
Wow.
like 5 in the morning. But when you get in LA at 4 in the morning, you're right in the traffic again. You're like tired as shit. You're like, oh, it's time to go. You gotta go because you're about to wreck right at the end of the trip.
But
Yeah,
you're
'cause
pumping
you're so tired.
Kanye. You're pumping Kanye
Oh,
the whole way though. Wow.
Actually, we were, yeah.
Keeping awake.
One of the things that I learned from watching Bourdain's original show, the No Reservation show, that it changed my opinion on things because I didn't have a strong opinion on food before that, other than that I really liked it. I didn't think of it as an art form. And watching his show and seeing the passion, his appreciation for food and for the way it's grown and brought to table and the production of it and then ultimately the flavor of it and the taste and his admiration for chefs and you guys as well. His admiration for it and his appreciation for the way everything's put together made me realize, like, oh, this is an art form.
It's a craft. And you know, Tony did something. Tony was the most faithful, we were so lucky to be on that ship with him, you know, that he took us aboard. And you could see he had the same apprenticeship we did, you know, like suffering in like big bistro kitchens and stuff. And you think about it, the guy, he didn't make the promise to himself that when he'd get rich and famous, he was going to buy a big house and not talk to people. He helped every cook not walk out of the kitchen and get famous, but get a voice, you know?
Oh, even
Yes.
outside of the television show, the work he did in private is massive.
And not look like a dirty guy that makes the pasta in the back, you know? All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, the manager in the suit and the owners, but who's the guy in the back?
Yeah.
You know?
No, he had appreciation for everybody, and he had a real passion for the process.
Yeah.
And the marginal characters, you know, there's lots of commercial restaurants in the city of Montreal, in any given city that he went to. And he's able to isolate, let's say, the marginal characters in every city that, we're historically bound, kind of. Fred and I practice a weird faction of French cooking called cuisine bourgeoise, and only kind of Tony and a handful of other guys can look at what we do and go, oh, those fuckers, they're up to that. No one's up to that.
He curated like his crew.
You guys are into that,
misfit,
really. He goes,
know?
you guys are the only people, like the last of the Mohicans, that do this kind of food. And we know, no, we can't stop. We got to keep on.
What a great guy to get it, too.
Yeah, because nobody does, right?
Right.
Nobody understands, the rabbit hole we're down. Tony did.
Yeah, the cognoscente. Yeah, he really did deeply influence my appreciation for food, the way I think about it. And again, treating it as an art form, which I just thought it was just delicious. I didn't think of it as like, oh, these guys are making temporary art. They're making art that you're gonna enjoy now, you know. And you can't put it on film. I mean, you can, but you're not gonna get it all. You're just gonna want to go out and experience it.
Yeah, ultimately, food is, you can't, we go and do we're asked to do 10 demonstrations. You can go on a big stage, it's 5,000 people to talk about food or make like little crackers with smoked salmon on stage. Food is not fit for a stage.
No.
Food is for a table for us to enjoy. With a fork, a knife. We talk about it. We go hunting. That's what food is.
People offer us food shows all the time, and I mean, I can't. It doesn't work.
And it's like, what's the concept? Well, you guys can be in a pickup truck and you go and visit your suppliers and maybe you have a bottle of wine with them after. I was like, dude, like we worked hard not to copy our like fellow, culinarians.
Yeah, you look at our food, it's like it's ours. It's not...
TV producers are out there just like blatantly proposing the previous show to you again,
Yes. Well, that's one of the things right after Anthony died. There was some talk about
vacuum.
Gordon Ramsay doing some very similar show, and the outcry against it was enormous. I mean, he was just getting assaulted online. I mean, it was crazy.
Everybody that I was talking to, our agent who represents us for our book, and she was saying like
it was the same.
All the big production companies like are being berated by people pitching who's going to be the next Tony, right?
I don't want to say that, but one of the character and you guys and you could take over.
Yeah, you could do it.
Because you guys, the way he went in West Virginia, and it wasn't like Republican, Democrat. Like he went to places, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I have my views, but let's break bread," And I always said that like all our countries are divided on issues, but there's nobody that overlaps them with a coherent vision.
Everybody loves each other when there's delicious food on the table, man.
Yeah, And guys like you with like a clear view and a rational and science-based and evidence-based view on things, and like Tony, just have such a voice now in our countries that I could see you doing a food show.
I love food, but I'll never do a food show. I just can't imagine.
No, because you ask good questions.
I like doing shows. I mean, I love having guys like you on and talking about food, but it takes a special type of person to want to travel 300 days a year, and that's essentially what Tony was doing. And I think that has a massive toll. It takes a massive toll on your body. It takes a massive toll on your psyche.
Your family, everything.
Yes, it's not healthy.
There's not enough melatonin or like CBD or like
it's not
cleanses to help you with that.
I travel more than enough already, and I've cut my traveling way back. I'm down to only 10 UFCs a year now, and I do comedy around that and stand-up comedy. But I consciously make the effort to travel much less because I just don't think it's good. I just don't think it's good for you, and also that road life, the drinking and all that other stuff that comes with it, that accentuates all the problems that you have with travel. And I think that's also one of the things that was dragging Tony down when he would talk about the sadness and the loneliness of being on the road. I can't help but, from knowing him and partying with him, I can't help but have thought that a lot of that was probably accentuated by the alcohol consumption. And you guys could speak to that now that you're clean and you're not experiencing those rugged hangovers every morning.
I was always worried for Tony that way, just that that hotel living, planes, trains, and automobiles constantly, and it wasn't like for a year. It was like
it's
12 years.
It's a sad life. To watch river monsters at 11 in the morning burping Jameson, and I'm referring to many occasions in our lives where you're traveling in a hotel room and you're in a beautiful place, but
you feel weird.
Yeah.
I've taken steps to mitigate some of that. One of the big ones is I travel with friends. I bring really good comics to work with me on the road, so that when I'm in these cities with friends, and we just go. It's like they're family, so we'll go eat together, we'll go work out together, and try to keep the unhealthy shit to a minimum.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
So we should tell everybody what we learned today. I'm revising my thinking about this virus because of Michael Yo. Michael Yo caught it. Michael Yo is healthy as fuck. He's not any high risk group. Like he doesn't have any pre-existing conditions. He's in shape, And he got it, and he got pneumonia too. And he said it was a double combination, and he thought he was going to die. And he was in the hospital for over a week. And 4 days ago, he said he thought he was going to die. That's fucking terrifying because Michael Yo is healthy. He's not some 80-year-old man. I talked to my friend, Dr. Peter Attia. He's a physician, and he gave
That's
me
the guy that swam from Maui.
Yes, he swam all the islands. He's a fucking straight-up savage. So his take, this is my question to him. I said, this is crazy shit. What is your take on how so many people experience very few symptoms, but others get wrecked? And he said, I still think most people below 55 sail through it. I've had 2 patients get it. Shitty cold and loss of a sense of smell and taste, which probably returns soon, but still a small fraction of these folks get hurt. I know a doc taking care of a 28-year-old fitness instructor on a ventilator in New York City today. Why? He said maybe some genetic predisposition. We know blood types matters. A is the worst, O is the best based on antibodies.
Bam.
He said, I'm O positive. He said,
too.
but I don't think that explains more than some of it. Maybe shit like vaping, he said, still too soon to tell. He is a straight up, no nonsense, no bullshit guy. And I listen to everything he says. So when guys like him are concerned, I get concerned. And he's concerned. This is a weird disease. Another thing that he said, it's weird that it seems that people who spend more time with this get it worse. He's like, it's not like, like doctors in hospitals with prolonged exposure get it really bad. Nurses in hospitals with prolonged exposure seem to get it really bad. Whereas some people get it and they don't get it bad. It's weird. It's a very, very strange disease according to doctors. And I think we're still trying to figure this out. It's just, wow. It's one of those things where everyone's just sort of absorbing the information as it comes in, and you got to be open to adjusting your opinions. And my opinions were, I really was concerned with old people, and I was concerned with sick people. Now, after Michael Yo, I'm like, okay, this is not that straightforward. There might be some other crazy factors here. Like for some people, yeah, like Idris Elba, who looks fantastic. Fine. But maybe other people are going to have a real hard time with it, like Michael Yo. Like, Michael Yo's not a sickly guy. He's a big, robust guy. That's a spooky one.
Yeah. I mean, your podcast with the
Osterholm?
Chicken Little, that scared the fuck out of me.
Chicken Little?
Fucking sitting in the back of my tour bus, and I hear this. I'm like, I've had a few cocktails. I hit a joint. Let's go to bed. Oh, cool. Who's this guy? Oh, the coronavirus. I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about that. Ooh. Holy... First thing I did, I told Jamie, I sat up in bed and I was Googled that motherfucker. I was like, he wrote a book, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Fuck that guy. I was so freaked out in that fucking podcast.
What's crazy about Osterholm is he predicted this shit literally specifically as to where it was going to come from.
He was very insightful. I didn't mean fuck that guy in a bad way.
No,
he was a very
I know
insightful dude.
No, he was
and
great.
it was a great podcast. But man, I'll tell you right now, Joe, you said, so guys that are overweight, that drink a lot, that smoke.
I was talking to you. You know that, right?
By the way, I thought you were.
I was.
I know.
I was. I was
serious?
like, Bird, I'm talking to you. I didn't want to say it, but I was like, piecing together out of all my good friends, who's my one friend who takes care of himself the worst? It's you.
It's me.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation, humans creating, like, it appears like grids, like a city grid.
Definitely. The Amazon is a colossal mystery, and it's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America before. First of all, to give some basic figures, the Amazon basin is huge. The Amazon basin is 7 million square kilometers in area. And within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists. And that's the 5.5 million square kilometers that is still covered by dense rainforest. And to put that into perspective, 5.5 million square kilometers is the size of the entire Indian subcontinent. So it's like saying, we've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored India, you know. We've done world archaeology, but we've just ignored the Amazon. It's the same argument. 5.5 million square kilometers. The view was, again, there was a dogma. There was a preconception. Human beings couldn't have flourished in the Amazon. It's not a resource-rich area. The soils are poor. It's a difficult area, challenging to get to, very far from the Bering Straits. So the view was that humans hadn't entered the Amazon until about 1,000 years ago. And then gradually, little by little, that view has begun to change. And it's begun to change because of the tragic clearances of the Amazon, because the Amazon rainforest is literally being cut down and turned into soybean farms and cattle ranches. And in that cutting down process has emerged things that shouldn't be there at all. For example, evidence that large cities flourished in the Amazon, enormous cities, which were larger than there was a Spanish explorer who went down the Amazon River system in 1541 to 1542. He was the first European to cross the entire length of South America from west to east along the Amazon. He reported seeing incredible cities, advanced arts and crafts, millions of people, a thriving culture. And 100 years later, when other Europeans got into the Amazon, they couldn't find these cities. So they said, oh, Francisco Orellana, that was his name, made it all up. It was just a fantasy. And then in the last decade, as the clearances of the Amazon have proceeded, we've begun to see the traces of those cities. What happened was that the Spaniards brought smallpox into the Amazon. Smallpox devastated the local population because there was no immunity to it. There was a massive die-off. The cities were deserted. Within 50 years, they were completely overgrown by the jungle, and that's why they were not seen by the explorers who came in 100 years later. But now the jungle's being cleared, those cities are emerging, and we can say that a city like London, which had a population of roughly 50,000 in the 16th century, there were cities of that size all over the Amazon. Wow. Huge numbers of them. And a possible total population of the Amazon that exceeded 20 million people.
What?
Yes, 20 million. This is the latest evidence from the Amazon. And then you ask yourself, how did they do that? How did they feed 20 million people in the Amazon? Because it's a fact, rainforest soils are poor. It's one of the reasons these soybean farms are a really stupid idea, because once you clear the rainforest, the land is largely unfertile and you can't grow stuff on it for very long. So how did they feed all these people? The answer was they invented a soil. And that soil has a name. It's called terra preta. Archaeologists refer to it as Amazonian dark earths or Amazonian black earth. It's a man-made soil. It's thousands of years old. It's full of microbes that are not found in adjoining soil. It's based around biochar. And you can take a handful of 8,000-year-old terra preta and you can add it to barren soil, and that soil will instantly become fertile. It's highly sought after in the Amazon, and it explains how they fed these people. There was science in the Amazon.
How did they create this?
Well, this is something that's not understood. It's still not understood by soil experts to this day as to how that was done, but it's one of many intriguing pieces of evidence of much higher development in the Amazon that it has been given credit for, and of a kind of science in the Amazon.
Jamie's got an image of it up there. So this is it?
This is terra preta, yeah. Exactly,
wow.
Exactly. And
so was that done by burns? Did they use controlled burns?
They did. One way that it was achieved was to do wet burning. Of middens. They would be burned and smolder. They wouldn't burn fiercely, which just produces charcoal. They would burn and smolder, and that what is called biochar would result, and that's part of the fertility of the soil. But the mystery is the microbial content of this soil, which is completely different from the microbes in neighboring soils, and that remains unexplained.
So, what are the theories? Composting, some sort of advanced composting?
Yes, some sort of advanced composting. But again, what has not been explained is the microbial content of these soils. So there, first of all, is an issue of how two things: how large populations get fed in the Amazon, and evidence that there was a culture in the Amazon that was capable of manipulating the environment in such a way that it could support large populations with the invention of terra preta. Secondly, new evidence, previously not recognized, the Amazon is basically a garden. The Amazon is a man-made rainforest. there are certain trees like Brazil nut trees or the ice cream bean tree, which are food crops, which are very, very valuable, and they dominate the tree regime in the Amazon. They're what's referred to as hyperdominant species. In other words, people living in the Amazon over thousands of years selected certain trees, which they then cultivated and grew. So the whole thing is not simply a wild, pristine rainforest. It's a very ancient man-made environment. And emerging from that man-made environment, as well as evidence of large cities, large populations, and this mysterious dark earth, are huge geometrical structures. And again, I go into this at length in America before because I love this mystery. We have in the UK structures that are called henges. I live in the city of Bath, and about 30 miles away there's a beautiful site called Avebury and another more famous site called Stonehenge. And what a henge is a ditch which has been dug deep, and then an embankment has been pushed up outside the ditch. When people first saw these structures, they wondered if they'd been built for defense. But then it became obvious they hadn't been built for defense, because if you want to create a moat, you put it outside your embankment, not inside your embankment. So a henge is an earthwork which consists of a deep moat with a large embankment outside it. And it can be circular, it can be square, and in the UK and other parts of Europe, it often contains stone circles, megalithic stone circles as well. But the henge itself is entirely an earthwork. What we find in the Amazon are thousands of henges that are now beginning to emerge from the cleared area of the jungle, and others that have been identified for the first time with LiDAR. LiDAR technology is being employed in the Amazon. It's non-destructive. You can see what's under the trees.
What is LiDAR?
Light imaging and detective radar. They bounce laser beams down into the jungle. There's a whole pattern of them. You need helicopters, and but it doesn't damage the rainforest. And you can strip away and see what's there. If this isn't too much of a diversion, let me give you the example of Guatemala. Guatemala is a small country. If I remember correctly, it's not much more than 100,000 square kilometers in size. It is filled with intriguing Mayan ruins. Everybody has heard of Tikal. What archaeologists didn't know was that literally within walking distance of Tikal, surrounding that whole area were more than 60,000 structures that they hadn't identified. And these have all been identified by LiDAR in a country that's just 100,000 kilometers in area. So you have to ask yourself, in that 5.5 million square kilometers of the Amazon, if LiDAR technology could be applied comprehensively, what would we find beneath there? And the evidence already is extremely tempting and extremely tantalizing. And I'm intrigued by these huge geometrical figures, which involve primarily circles and squares. And they are classic henges in the sense that they are deep ditches surrounded by huge embankments. They're extremely geometrical. For example, you can find an octagon surrounding a square. At a place called Jacosá in the Amazon, you can find a square perfectly enclosing a circle. Now, that is an exercise called squaring the circle that our academics have given to the Greeks. They said the Greeks were the first people who performed that exercise. But now we find in dated sites in the Amazon that this was being done in the Amazon long before the Greeks.
What are the dates?
The earliest dates that have been found in these sites now are about 3,500 years old. About 3,500 years old. But the evidence is that the sites have been constantly remade. And what intrigues me is what remains in that 5.5 million square kilometers that has not been investigated yet. We are just, I think, looking at the edges of a mystery. The archaeologists involved, who are mainly from Finland and also from Brazil, feel the same. Their estimate is that there are thousands of these structures remaining in the jungle, and they're open as to how old they may ultimately prove to be. The investigation needs to be done. But what's fascinating about them is this very powerful geometry and astronomy. So a number of the sites are perfectly aligned to true north, true south, true east, and true west. I'm not talking about magnetic north. I'm talking about true astronomical north. To do that, there's only one way to do it, and that's with astronomy. So that tells us that astronomers were at work in the Amazon. The geometry is very complex and very precise. That tells us that people with geometrical skills were at work in the Amazon. And thirdly, the scale of the sites of hundreds of meters, gigantic earthworks on the scale of hundreds of meters, tells us that this was highly organized project that was undertaken on a very large scale by very large numbers of people. It's a wonderful mystery, and it deserves much further attention. And that's Jacosa, exactly, the squares, squaring the circle. So you can see the outside embankment, and then inside it is the square ditch, and then there's another embankment inside that, and a circle inside that.
It's crazy that they made a road right through that. What
well,
assholes.
Modern road, yeah, because there's no respect for the ancient world, unfortunately.
And there's another one. Look at that! Wow, that's incredible.
So there are thousands of these things.
How they found the stuff that they found in the Amazon? What imaging technology were they using to find all this?
Initially, it was entirely found because areas of the rainforest had been cleared. Economic interests said, we want to make a cattle ranch here, or we want to make a soya bean farm here. So we're just going to clear the rainforest. In the process of clearing the rainforest, they start discovering these earthworks that had previously been completely overgrown by the jungle. Then the next step was to say, what could we do to find out more about this? Obviously, they don't want to destroy more jungle, and luckily we have a technology which is LiDAR, as I mentioned, which uses radar. And using LiDAR, they've been able to identify many more of these sites, and then to get to the sites without destroying the jungle, and to begin excavations on them, and to find that they go back, in the cases of the ones that have been explored so far, at least 3,000 years. This is an intriguing development, completely unexplained in our understanding of the Amazon. And what it suggests is a heritage of extremely ancient knowledge. You don't wake up one morning and create a perfectly geometrical square or circular earthwork that's perfectly aligned to true north, south, east, and west on an enormous scale. There has to be a background to that. There has to be a reason for doing it. And the evidence is none of these sites were lived in. There's no habitation refuse found in them whatsoever. We don't know what they were used for. I make the case in America before that they're connected to a system of ideas which is found all around the world, which is to do with death and the afterlife destiny of the soul.
Jorge Masvidal, born November 12, 1984, is an American mixed martial artist competing in the UFC's welterweight division. A professional since 2003, he has also competed for Bellator, Strikeforce, Shark Fights, and World Victory Road. He holds the record for the fastest knockout in UFC history, at 5 seconds. As of July 14, 2020, he is number 4 in the UFC welterweight rankings. Early life and education. Masvidal was born and raised in Miami to a Cuban father and Peruvian mother. According to Masvidal, his father left Cuba in a self-made raft when he was young, ending up at Virgin Islands. Masvidal's father was later imprisoned for more than 20 years for manslaughter and drug trafficking. Masvidal was often involved in street fighting from a young age. There are videos on YouTube of his fights defeating Kimbo Slice's protégé. Masvidal competed in wrestling at St. Brendan High School, but failed to stay eligible because of his grades. He then began training in karate and mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts career. Early career. Masvidal won his kickboxing debut by unanimous decision on April 11, 2003, at Fast and Fearless event. Citation needed. His most high-profile kickboxing victory came in the main event of the Absolute Fighting Championship Xi event held on April 30, against current UFC competitor and The Ultimate Fighter 5 contestant Joe Lawson. Masvidal won via technical knockout in the second round. Masvidal garnered a 3-0 record in the now-defunct Bodog fight promotion, including decision victories over Keith Wisniewski, Steve Berger, and a head kick knockout of Pride Fighting Championships and UFC veteran Yves Edwards. Bellator. Masvidal was signed by Bellator and entered their lightweight tournament in April 2009. 12 Masvidal won his first fight via TKO in the first round. However, he was defeated in the semi-finals by Toby Imada at Bellator 5, who won via inverted triangle choke submission in the third round. This upset loss was acknowledged by Sherdog and MMA Junkie as submission of the year. Masvidal faced and defeated Eric Reynolds at Bellator 12 in a 160 pounds catchweight bout via rear naked choke submission. He was rumored to be fighting again but was released by the organization. Post-Bellator. Masvidal moved up to the welterweight division to fight Paul Daly at Shark Fights 13 in Amarillo, Texas in September 2010. The bout was later made a catchweight of 171.75 pounds after Daly failed to make weight. 13 Daly defeated Masvidal via unanimous decision. After this performance, Masvidal signed with Strikeforce. Strikeforce Masvidal returned to Strikeforce in early 2011, facing Billy Evangelista at Strikeforce. Fija vs Henderson. He won the fight via unanimous decision. Masvidal then fought former Elite XC lightweight champion KJNOONS17 in a number 1 contenders bout. Masvidal won at the end of the first round with a high kick. Masvidal faced Gilbert Melendez for the Strikeforce lightweight championship at Strikeforce. Melendez vs Masvidal on December 17, 2011 at the Valley View Casino Center in San Diego, California. He lost the fight via unanimous decision.